My name's Tim Dalton. I'm originally from Hull in East Yorkshire, and I've been involved in the music industry since I left school in 1979 and went out on the road with the Acrylic Victims supporting the Clash on the White Riot tour, and it was everything I'd always wanted to do. Very prolific time in the 80s for bands in Britain, and I moved through the job ranks really quickly. Some great bands just fell into my lap. I ended up at the age of about 19 mixing an arena tour for the Beastie Boys, and out of that I ended up getting Run DMC, Public Enemy, Houdini, LL Cool J. I got a phone call to go out and mix a band called Simple Minds, who were about the biggest band on the planet at the time. I ended up going out and mixing David Bowie, mixed sound for Paul McCartney. Kind of look back on my life and I go, people would give their right arm just to do one of those bands, and I got to do all of them. For the last 30 years I've answered more questions about Faith No More than any other band. There seems to be this interest in them. For 5 years we were this small cult band playing to 120 people a night in pubs. Patton joined the band, the album went ballistic. We went from playing 120 seat venues to 1,000 seat venues to 3,000 seat venues to 5,000 seat venues to supporting Guns N' Roses on their arena tour and being second on the bill at Rock in Rio to 500,000 people. It moved incredibly quickly. We started this tour, and when I say tour, what you're probably thinking of is a ginormous luxury tour bus and huge great big venues. What I'm actually talking about is kind of a stinky old transit van with a row of bench seats and all the equipment piled in the back, and me and the band, and that was it. We always loved going to Berlin because it was a big party city. And the people who booked the tours would always give you a night off because you could never ever tell how long it would take to get through the transit corridor, because they might impound the vehicle and hold you for a long time because they could. On this occasion, we got through the Berlin corridor very quickly, and we had night off in the city. And like a rock and roll band would, where we didn't have to play a gig, we put our jackets on and we went out and we had some pizzas and we drank a load of beer and we went around some nightclubs, and the city was absolutely electric. The Berlin Wall was still in place. Everywhere you went there was people protesting on the streets, and there were people with placards and banners and there was huge amounts of music and civil unrest, and there was guards strutting around with guns and rifles. The next day we were all kind of taken up into doing the actual gig, and I remember we drove to the gig in this old beaten up Mercedes van, and it was a little doorway that said The Loft at the Metropolitan. You had to walk up about 10,000 stairs to get into this club, and when you got there it was the most smelly, graffitied, run down kind of place that you'd ever seen in your life. And it was a real sense of disappointment really after the excitement of the last 24 hours of being in Berlin, of walking into this club. But that all changed because the moment we walked in the venue, the door flew open and our mine hosts walked out, Monica and Klaus. And Monica and Klaus must have been about 60 or 65, except they weren't dressed like 65-year-olds. Monica was in skin-tight leather trousers with laces up the side and lots of bare flesh showing. She had pierced body all over. You could see her pierced nipples through this tight top she was wearing. She had a bright purple Mohican, and Klaus was very similar. He had a huge, great big moustache, and he was dressed in leather, and he had a Holiday in Cambodia, Dead Kennedy's t-shirt on, and he kind of wearing jack boots and tattoos. And as we walked in, they hugged us like we were the best of friends. And the show was just electric. It was you couldn't put your finger on it. It was metaphysical. It was it was out of body comprehension levels. I don't know whether that was the cocaine and the champagne or whether it was the actual electricity of what was going on. But I remember Klaus come running in just as we were about to start the encore, and we always encored the show with the Black Sabbath song War Pigs. And Klaus came running in, super excited, and grabbed hold of me and shook me and went, Das Wallen is vegan, Das Wallen is vegan. I said, what are you talking about, Klaus? He's like, the wall has gone, the wall's gone, the wall's fallen down. And I said, quick, run backstage and tell the band that before they get back on stage. Anyway, the band came back on stage and they played one of the best versions of war pigs that I've ever heard. Jim, the guitar player, I don't know what it was that night, but he was absolutely on fire. And then Patton, halfway through the encore, starts screaming, yeah,
"Timauer is thick! Timauer is thick!"
The wall is gone, the wall is gone. And then he just shouts out,
"Thank you, Berlin! Fucking see you later, man!" And guess what? The wall is gone! Woo!
And of course we all ran backstage and it was like, "Klaus, is this true? Has the wall..." And he goes, yes, the wall came down about 20 minutes ago. And we very hastily threw all the equipment in the back of the van and we drove down to what was Checkpoint Charlie, which is where the British command post used to be. And when we got there, it was like nothing you'd ever seen before. It was chaos. It was music playing, there was free beer, there was people dancing in the streets. You know, all the armed guards and the guns were all stacked up and out the way. And I remember going down there and thinking, this is incredible. This is history in the making. And at that point, you know, all the East Germans were just flooding across from East Germany. And people who had not, families who had not seen each other for about 30 years. Incredibly emotional, really, you know. And all these people were flooding across in their little blue Trabant cars or walking across. And you could tell the East Germans from the West Germans because they were super poor. There was no overweight people. They were obviously starving. Most of them couldn't speak English, but the West Germans could. And there was just this incredible kind of impromptu street party. We drank beer, we partied, and it was kind of put back into the history books. So it was an amazing evening. It was just pure synchronicity that we were there.